Good afternoon, all. I'm Kaylin Walls, and I'm the president of the Louisville Forum. Welcome to our June 2025 program. The Louisville Forum programs typically meet at noon on the second Wednesday of each month here at Vincenzo's Restaurant in downtown Louisville. Founded in 1984, the Louisville Forum is a nonpartisan, nonprofit public issues group, and we host debates and sometimes discussions of contemporary and occasionally controversial public policy issues that impact the greater Louisville community. For more information about the Louisville Forum, our events, to join or to make a reservation, please visit louisvilleforum.org. And now for today's program. The United States Justice Department drops the Louisville Metro Police Department consent decree. So what happens next? As the title suggests, today's program is about what is happening right now, current plans, and what we can expect for Louisville in the future. But before we get there, I want to take us a couple years back to the context surrounding the consent decree. It's been a few years, but if you recall, Louisville Metro Police Department and the city became the center of local and national criticism after Breonna Taylor was shot and killed by Louisville Metro police officers during the execution of a no-knock warrant in 2020. The Department of Justice began shortly thereafter about a 2-year-long investigation into Louisville Metro Police Department and Metro government. The investigation resulted in a report issued in 2023, which ultimately concluded that the Department of Justice believed that they had reasonable cause to assume that Louisville Metro Police Department and Metro government had engaged in a pattern or practice of unlawful conduct, including excessive use of force and searches based on invalid warrants and violation of federal law and the U.S. Constitution. The report also detailed a litany of incidents, including officers who had videotaped themselves throwing drinks at pedestrians from their car, insulting people with disabilities, and using racial slurs or racially charged language with Louisvillians. In December of 2024, the city reached a consent decree agreement with the Department of Justice. And for those who don't know, the consent decree was a court-ordered agreement outlining reforms which Louisville Metro Police Department would undertake, in addition to changes that it had made prior to the DOJ investigation and during negotiations about the consent decree. Among other changes, the consent decree required that an independent monitor would report to the court about progress on those mandatory changes. But on May 21st, 2025, the Department of Justice under the new administration had announced its intention not to make further required court filings to address the court's questions about the consent decree, and instead opted to dismiss the lawsuit against the city with prejudice, permanently closing the case. Almost immediately, Mayor Greenberg's office announced that to ensure the promised progress would continue, Louisville would move forward with the community commitment, Louisville's consent decree. With us today to discuss the consent decree, the DOJ decision, and what's next for Louisville, we welcome back to the forum two former panelists, Mayor Greenberg and Chief Paul Humphrey. And though neither of them really need an introduction, Mayor Greenberg is a proud graduate of Jefferson County Public Schools, the University of Michigan, and Harvard Law School. He was an attorney before helping launch and lead 21C Museum Hotels, and in January 2023, he took office as the mayor of Louisville Metro. A proud Louisvillian, Mayor Greenberg has been married to his wife Rachel for over 25 years, and they have 2 sons, Daniel and Benjamin. Welcome back to the forum.
Thank you.
And Chief Humphrey was sworn in as chief of the Louisville Metro Police Department in September of 2024 after serving as interim chief for several months. A lifelong Louisville resident, Chief Humphrey joined Louisville Metro Police Department as a patrol officer in 2006 following his graduation from the University of Louisville. Go Cards. Prior to becoming chief, he served in numerous leadership positions, including SWAT team commander, assistant chief, and helped establish the Louisville Metro Police Department Accountability and Improvement Bureau that ultimately led to the Summit Wellness Center opening. Germane to today's program, Chief Humphrey also represented Louisville Metro Police Department during the DOJ consent decree negotiations before being named interim chief in June of 2024. Welcome back to the forum.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned previously, before we start with the audience questions today, I want to give a few moments to give both the mayor and the chief some time to address today's topic and give us a few opening remarks. So, Chief Humphrey, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'll talk kind of larger, bigger picture than just a DOJ investigation and talk about the culture that we're creating at Louisville Metro Police, a culture that's dedicated to improvement and looking forward. We are educated by our past. We're not handcuffed by our past. And so we take the lessons that are in that DOJ report, and we are trying to build a culture that learns from those lessons and is constantly looking for ways to improve. And one of the things that we've done recently that's completely separate from any of that type of stuff, but is really about who we are, is we took another look at our mission statement recently. The mission statement of Louisville Metro Police was a little bit long, something that no one really remembered. It was developed back pre-merger and hasn't really been incorporated into the fabric of who we are. And I think it's very important that the officers and the men and women, sworn and civilian, buy into and have ownership of who we are in that mission statement. And so it hasn't even made it into policy yet. We've just announced this to the department in the last couple of days. So I will let you all know what the new mission statement of Louisville Metro Police is. It is the mission of the Louisville Metro Police Department to enhance the safety and the quality of life for all people by enforcing the law, preserving peace, while holding ourselves to the highest ethical standards. To me, that is extremely important, and it encapsulates everything that we are about. We are about taking care of people and keeping people safe and doing it the right way. And so that is our mission, is to keep moving forward and looking to the future of how we can do this job better each day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Just to add a little bit on what the Chief said is, as we move forward here, both the Chief and I and our teams are very forward-looking. We're thinking about the future. We have been informed by the past and are looking forward to how the future is going to be brighter and better for everyone in Louisville, and most importantly, safer, so when we focus on public safety, we are looking at this as a comprehensive effort. It's not just about police department reforms and improvements. It's also about continuing the progress that under Chief Humphrey's leadership we're making in reducing violent crime. For those of you who don't know, year to date this year in Louisville, shootings and homicides are down 30%, just over last year. That is tremendous progress. That said, we have a big way to still go. We have to continue doing and double down and move faster and continue in this direction to bring that number down even further. At the same time, we want to make sure that the police who are working so incredibly hard every day to prevent that violent crime from even happening and then responding when it does, are also holding themselves accountable. And that's what the Chief is committed to. You just heard it in the mission statement, and that's what all of our efforts with the community commitment are all about. One other thing that we have done is we're in the process of creating a new community safety commission. This is going to be an organization which has representatives from different parts of the judicial system. It's going to have a representative from one of each of eight LMPD divisions, so the entire city, the entire county is represented geographically, and it will also have representatives from different community organizations that have been involved in the criminal justice area, broadly defined, to help provide continuous input to the Chief, to me, to our teams as we move forward, working to improve public safety, and at the same time, working to improve the relations between the police department and the entire community. So if you all know anyone that's interested, you have until, I believe it's next Monday. Is that right, Megan? Okay. You've got almost a week left to apply until next Monday. You can find out more on louisvilleky.gov/safe-Louisville about how to apply. But we really want people from all over the city with all different backgrounds to apply to be on that commission. The other thing that we're doing is also, as part of this community commitment, just like which was in the consent decree we negotiated, we are planning to have an independent monitor that will be a third party, a neutral observer, that can validate all of the reforms that the Chief and his team have already made it. Just to put this in context, folks, over 260 policies and changes have already been made. Before a Department of Justice consent decree was even finalized, which it never got, before we have the Community Safety Commission, we have not been waiting. We have been taking action, and we're committed to that continued action. And we believe having an independent monitor validate that continuous improvement will be healthy to the community. So there are also two upcoming events for community feedback on that selection process. One is tonight at the Republic Bank YMCA at 18th and Broadway from 6 to 7:30. And the second listening session is on Saturday, June 28th at the Newburgh Community Center from 10 to 11:30. So if you're interested in any of that, please join as well. And we look forward to discussing everything on your mind here today. Thanks for having us.
Thank you all again, and I'll go ahead and open the floor to audience questions. Lourdes and Mike.
We're going to combine some questions that are phrased in the same way, but one of them is how is what's happening, the so-called street takeovers in the Highlands, how is that being addressed differently from other mass gathering of people / protests?
Yeah, so the question being about street takeovers versus protests and that type of thing. Well, the behavior is completely different, and when we're talking about people exercising their First Amendment rights, it is our duty and it's our responsibility to make sure that people can safely express their First Amendment rights versus creating safety and danger issues for the public. So our approach to those two different situations are based on the behavior of the people involved. And so when people don't make any issues that are a threat to public safety, we leave it alone, and if they do, then we'll intervene.
We're also, as it relates to the Bardstown Road corridor, in addition to what LMPD is doing with respect to protecting people and protecting property along that corridor, we're also looking at long-term solutions. And so I know we've got several council members here today, Councilwoman Purvis, Councilman Herndon, Councilman Piagentini. We're looking to get together with them and their colleagues to look at some long-term solutions, maybe in that area. We want balance. We want the Highlands, we want other neighborhoods to have great balance, to be great places to live, great places to shop, great places to enjoy yourself at a restaurant or a bar, nightclub. There are neighborhoods that can thrive, but balance is important. And there's some things that we might be able to do and working in close connection with our friends on Metro Council and maybe even at the state that can help us create more balance as one of the long-term solutions. So Bardstown Road does not just end up being all nightclubs, for example.
Well, and that does raise the question of the weekend, the good weekend last weekend, the two crazy weekends before that on Baxter Avenue and Bardstown Road. Tell us a little bit about your thinking, both the chief and the mayor, on how we approach that and what we're going to do in the future.
So the approach on that is, obviously, when you think about, we issued a crime plan, and part of that crime plan is what we call data responsive policing. We got a couple of data points over 2 weekends that we had a problem, and so we changed our resources to make sure that we addressed that problem. And the first weekend that we addressed it, what we realized is that we need to be much more forward-facing and much more proactive. So as opposed to responding to a problem, we prevent that problem. And so that's what you saw last weekend, and that's what you'll see the weeks coming forward, is that we get ahead of that problem before it becomes a real issue that disturbs the neighborhood.
One other thing to add to what the chief said is we are not afraid to take action. And in another area, in addition to LMPD, that's critically important, whether it's on the Bardstown Road corridor or other entertainment areas, is having a strong ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control Division. And under our director there, Brad Silvera, we have taken action. I'm proud that over the past year, we've closed down 3 bars along Bardstown Road that were not playing by the rules. Again, we want people to enjoy themselves. We want people, Louisville is known for its amazing hospitality. Part of that hospitality is enjoying a bourbon or a beer or whatever you like to enjoy. But it's got to be done safe and by the rules. That's what they're there for. And so when these 3 establishments were not playing by the rules, we took action. One is suing us right now. We're defending our actions because we believe we took that. Just this week alone, we shut down another bar, not on Bardstown Road, but not too far away, that it was allowing underage drinking to happen. In fact, when Director Silvera came in to do an inspection during one of their more peak hours, they were caught escorting underage people in the bar out the back door to escape their purview. They are now shut down. We want this to be a great hospitality city under the rules that we have established. And if people aren't playing by the rules, we'll enforce them.
Thank you. There's a question here about the consent decree and the metrics in place to look at crime statistics and things like that. And then the follow-up question is, what precisely are the metrics? And is there a certain an acceptable percent of crime that we should feel comfortable with? And what is the police doing differently to achieve 30% less?
Okay, that was a lot of questions in there.
Yes.
Let me
Yes.
start by saying the consent decree does not have any target numbers with respect to crime. I mean, our goal is for this to be a crime-free city. That should be every city's goal, every country's goal. I don't know any city that has gotten there yet, but that will always be our goal, to have no violent crime, to have no one to have to suffer the loss of life in their family or of a loved one, someone that has been injured or killed by gun violence, no one who feels unsafe in their home wherever they live. So that is our goal. And that is, we're taking care of that through a very comprehensive strategy, a lot of what the chief has talked about at LMPD, and a lot of other things that you can see in our Safe Louisville plan that are working to prevent crime from happening. Everything from investing in our parks and our libraries and our community centers and partnerships with nonprofit organizations to provide more programs and opportunities to young adults. That is part of our public safety initiative, is to get every young person in Louisville on a better path in life. That is not what's in the community commitment. What's in the community commitment is about moving forward in terms of how we, and there are 8 objectives. The chief can talk about that. I will just give credit to the chief and his team on one thing before I turn it over to him. In addition to what was going to be required by the DOJ, what we are now voluntarily doing, the chief brought in a team from the Ohio State University, researchers, that I think it's the first example of this anywhere in the country, where researchers from the Ohio State University meet regularly with the chief and his executive team that are providing real-time feedback based on research and data that's going on at LMPD to help them make continuous improvements in their policing activities.
So, again, I'll refer back to our crime plan that we put out back in the fall that primarily was created by Deputy Chief Emily McKinley, who's over here to my right, your left. But there are no numeric goals when it comes to crime. Our job doesn't have a finish line. We don't have a season. We don't have a championship. It is about constant improvement. So what is the next iteration of the way that we can improve public safety in the community? So it's not just about looking at are there things that we are messing up and not doing well, but it's also looking at the things that we're doing well to make sure that they're by intent and by design, not by chance, and that we continue those, repeat those, and improve on those. And then when it comes to the compliance side, we have an entire division that's dedicated to understanding what are we meeting our standards of policy. So not just the investigative side that you hear about with PSU, professional standards that investigate internal affairs complaints, but we have, for instance, an audit unit that goes back, they reviewed over 3,500 body camera footage last year to try to assess officers' compliance with policy so we can see, do we need to adjust the policy? Do we need to adjust how our leadership is giving feedback to officers? Where are the places where we're having gaps? And then to the mayor's point, what we're working with Ohio State on is, are the reform, quote unquote, reform efforts that we're putting in place, are they having a positive, negative, or neutral effect on our ability to combat crime? So trying to take this as a holistic approach that really doesn't have a finish line.
I also want to add 3 other areas that I think are contributing to some of this positive progress that you're seeing. In all 3 of these areas, I do want to thank my friends on the Metro Council that are here with today and their colleagues, because they also supported all 3 of these initiatives. One is significant pay raises for LMPD last year and continuing to move forward for the officers. There are 19 different police departments just in Jefferson County. If we want the best and the brightest to be attracted to LMPD and then make their career with LMPD, we need to pay them appropriately. And so we have, thanks to a new historic contract that we signed last year with the police officers, we are on our way towards that goal to attract and retain the best and the brightest. And you're starting to see it. The recruiting class at LMPD right now is the largest that it has been in years, and we hope and plan for that trend to continue. Secondly, you heard in the chief's introduction that he and his colleagues were instrumental in planning the Wellness Center. The Wellness Center is a really new concept that is an innovative national model that police departments all around the country are coming to visit to see what we're doing here in Louisville. It is a place where police officers and some other first responders have support for physical health, for mental health, for financial health, for spiritual well-being, all in one place. We need to support our police officers and first responders. They do incredibly difficult work every single day of the year, and it's not easy. And so to have this support is incredibly important as a recruitment, a retention tool, but also to improve their work that they're doing every day. And finally, a deflection program, which you might have heard about. Now, when you call 911, if you are suffering from a mental health crisis, you will get a trained professional on the phone, or if necessary, a trained professional that comes to your door to help you deal with that mental health crisis. We've been relying on police officers to do a lot more than their core training in preventing and responding to crime. And this has been provided better service to individuals who are in need of mental health issues, and it's also freed up our officers to keep them focused on preventing violent crime.
And that leads us to another natural area of discussion, is the whole notion of de-escalation. And we're seeing on TV right now in Los Angeles and around the country interactions between police officers and people. Can you discuss, first the chief, I think, what sorts of training do police officers get in de-escalation?
So this is a good question, because I think de-escalation is one of those words that we all toss around and we all have a different meaning for what it is. Think about de-escalation as a desired outcome. De-escalation is not a thing. We can't do de-escalation to you. We can't take it from you. We can't put it on you. It requires your cooperation at some point. So what tools, tactics, techniques, whether that's physical, positioning, verbal, all of those things, what are those things that we can do to increase the likelihood of an outcome that is best for all of us? And so when you think about de-escalation, one of the things that we instituted was a training called ICAT, Integrating Communications, Assessment, and Tactics. And that is from the Police Executive Research Forum, a national training. And a study was done on our usage of that training and saw that use of force, officer injuries, suspect injuries, all went down by over 20% after that. So understand that de-escalation comes in many forms, but it is the outcome. It is not the thing that we do. We use all of our tools and tactics and knowledge and experience to reach that outcome.
Thank you so much. I have questions here about, have you taken any lessons learned from other cities' approach to similar situations? For example, New Orleans was under a consent decree for over a decade, and there was a lot of negative feedback about the consent decree. And then finally, is the federal government assisting in any way?
So what was the second part of your
Is the
question?
federal government, how is the federal government assisting in this process?
Okay, so as far as the learnings, we spent a ton of time going to other cities, building relationships in other cities, not just consent decree cities, a lot of consent decree cities, so between New Orleans, Baltimore, LA, several other places, Albuquerque, Seattle. We've kind of been all over the country and built those relationships. And what we tried to do, this is why when we talk about we didn't wait, we went to a lot of those cities and said, all right, what has been effective for you, what has not been effective? And let's not only figure out what will work here, let's make a better version of it. And then on top of that, let's use that knowledge when we go into negotiations for the consent decree to say, look, you're asking us to do item A, but it's shown to have been problematic in these other cities or vice versa, and come up with our own ideas and plan that actually fits Louisville as opposed to just recycling the same thing, which obviously is a huge complaint about consent decrees, is that it's a template that they just lay over every city the same, and every city does not have the same issues, does not have the same culture, and does not have the same opportunities. And so we wanted to make sure we learn those lessons from other places.
And one other thing there, one of the lessons learned was that there are some cities that were under consent decrees for over a decade, spending tens and $20, $30 million on compliance costs. We wanted to really focus on an exit path so that here in Louisville, with the limited resources that we have in our city budget, we could focus those on our first responders, on public safety, on LMPD, on police, on EMS, and not on some third-party consultants from out in the state. And so we believe, based on the progress that LMPD had already made, we could achieve these goals in a quicker period of time than other cities, and we still believe that will happen, and we're showing that every day.
And the federal government's
The
support?
federal government is, as soon as the judge has not yet ruled on the Department of Justice motion to dismiss, but as soon as the judge does rule, and if he rules as expected to dismiss the case, the federal government will have no involvement in this moving forward.
That brings up the question we've gotten from a couple of folks about the involvement of the council in the going forward, in modeling both the people, one suggestion of a people's consent decree. Are you all taking that into account?
There is an ordinance that is, or a resolution, I should say. There is a resolution that I believe is coming before the Metro Council on Thursday night. As my reading of the current draft, it may be amended. The Metro Council members here can respond to this better than me. But the latest draft that I saw, my understanding, my reading of that is that everything that's called for in that resolution are things that we either are already doing or have already done. And we will continue to do that as well. So we have been working closely with colleagues on Metro Council, informing them every step of the way. We will continue to, and so we are going to continue to move forward. But there is nothing inconsistent with the latest draft of the resolution that I saw that's in front of council tomorrow night and anything that we are doing.
Thank you.
And can I chime in
Oh,
on that?
of course.
Just to give some perspective, the community commitment, I believe, is a 214-page document that touches just about every part of the agency. So just to put that in perspective about how comprehensive of a plan that we have going forward.
This is a question for Chief Humphrey. Would you please describe the process through which you review uses of force by LMPD, and how is it different from the past?
So in the past, effectively, use of force reports were completed by a sergeant and went up through the chain of command to be completed and entered into our internal affairs tracking system. I'm not going to get too far into how that process worked, but I'll tell you what the process is now that has much more oversight, much more feedback. First of all, we retrained the entire department on understanding the law, the Constitution, the policy updates that we had. So we have now a unit called Force Investigations and Review Unit. It's made up of an officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and a lawyer, and they review every single use of force on the department. So an officer has a use of force. That use of force, they have to report that, have a written document of what happened. The sergeant comes out, interviews witnesses, collects video, reviews the video, makes an assessment of whether the force was justified or not, pushes that up through the chain of command, and all that force is then centrally reviewed to make sure that we have consistency in how we're assessing our use of force. And then it gets pushed to the executive staff for final approval if there's a problem or there's an investigation that needs to be initiated from that point on. So there are a lot more layers and a lot more standardization to our review of use of force at this point.
The process seemed to have begun a long time ago for the consent decree. Did it take a long time? How does that compare with how long it could have taken or has taken in other jurisdictions?
I'm incredibly glad you asked that question, because there are a lot of people that think that our administration, that LMPD was the reason for the delay. Then Attorney General Merrick Garland came to Louisville March something of 2023. We offered to provide a first draft of a consent decree that day to the United States Department of Justice. They insisted that they would provide us with the first draft. Notwithstanding our weekly requests where that draft was coming, we got the first draft of the consent decree 11 and a half months later. So we waited basically a year to see a first draft of the consent decree after Attorney General Garland came to our city. And I can assure you that from the second we got that draft, that Megan Metcalf, who's my Deputy General Counsel, Chief Humphrey, Deputy Chief McKinley, and about a dozen other people in the county attorney's office, in my office, in LMPD, worked day and night with getting this done as their primary focus. So Louisville Metro government was not the reason why this took time. And we were very clear. I was very clear with the Deputy Deputy Attorney General at the time. Chief was very clear. Megan, everyone was very clear on what our goals were, which we've all talked about here today. There was very little disagreement on what the objectives were, on what the outcomes were, on what the strategies to get there were. But we wanted it to be very clear that if we entered into this agreement, how do you get out? How much do we have to pay to out-of-town monitors? And what is that exit ramp? And there should be a time on this where we have the ability to revisit so that we can prove the progress to the community, to the federal government, to the judge, to everyone, that we were confident we were going to make. Those guiding principles never changed. Eventually, we got there, but that was the reason for the delay.
And if I can add a little bit more perspective to this, I firmly believe in the role that the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice should fulfill. That being said, there are a lot of frustrations nationally that I think have been talked about endlessly in how that goes. And from the very beginning of the initiation of the investigation, even prior to this mayor being in place, we said to the Department of Justice, who is getting this right and what can we do differently? We will go anywhere. We are willing to spend the money, we are willing to spend the time, we are willing to put in the work. You tell us who's getting it right, and they couldn't even tell us that. At any point, we said, we are not waiting for this. We are in the process of changing, and they were more concerned with protecting a case than they were with improving the police department in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's a problem. And the bureaucracy of the process, when you look at the consent decree in Baltimore and it starts off as just to change a policy related to the consent decree, was a 3 to 6 month process of all of these different steps that had to be done just to implement a simple policy change. That's not okay. We are talking about, we want to improve this city right now, not a year from now, not 6 months from now, not 10 years from now. And so there are a lot of things that could be improved about that process, but believe me, we are not the ones that held that process up. We were pushing for that to move forward, and when he came into office, it was even more of a push to move it forward even more quickly. So it was very frustrating to exist in that circumstance where we wanted to push things and we couldn't.
And I'll just add, if we were using delay as a negotiating tactic, we would not have voluntarily signed the community commitment within hours of the Department of Justice announcing they were dropping the case. It would have been a very different response. We would have just said, okay, they're out. That's in the past, no more. So that's clearly not what happened.
Is there any data that shows the status of community relations between the LMPD and neighborhoods of Louisville? And what paths are you doing in order to improve those relations?
That's one area, Chief, that I just want to compliment you and your entire team on. The outreach that LMPD is making to interact with members all over the entire community is very significant. A renewed focus on something called the Police Activity League, where there are police officers that are interacting with kids, and whether it's running at Iroquois Park or basketball leagues in Portland or every neighborhood in between is creating real relationships from people on LMPD and members of the community at an early age with kids to help build that trusting relationship, to going to places where you would not expect to see police officers, again, just to meet people where you are. The days of having come meet your officer event, we still do some of that, but you get the same 12 people that show up at every one of those events versus proactively going into the community where people are for a reason totally unrelated to meeting LMPD officers. You then have more natural conversations, you can develop real relationships, and that's one of the ways that I think things are really starting to improve.
And a couple of things, we partner with a company called Zen City to conduct routine surveys. So we keep a track of sentiment in the community on what's important to them and how they're feeling about their police department. And then separately, I'll kind of echo what the mayor said. I know that there is a gap. We've had this conversation several times, particularly in the last month or so. I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of getting information out about the way this department operates and what we're doing. We're trying to be transparent, and I think you've seen much more information come out about the operations of LMPD than you ever have. And I would argue you probably get more information about LMPD than any other agency in the department, in the country. That being said, I still know that there's a gap. I love talking about this department. I love talking about the men and women that work here and what we do. So I am more than open to ideas about how we can do that and reach audiences better. It's great that the people that follow our Facebook page hear what we have to say. It's great that those same 12 people show up to the same town halls over and over again. But there are the average working people, the people in this room that we need a better opportunity to get to. So I'm open to your ideas about how to reach that set of people that we don't always have the opportunity to get in front of.
A couple more things on that note also. One is we know that the community has been asking for transparency. And I have a weekly press conference. The chief has a bi-weekly press conference. My guess is that's the first time ever that we do both. Any members of the media, every week they can ask me a question at least one time. There are many other times I interact with the media. Every other week, we're willing to answer any questions from members of the media every week and making ourselves available. We've had a new policy, so if there's an officer-involved shooting, we now release that footage within 10 days of when that occurs. And also a new approach to recruiting. Part of changing the culture of any organization, this is not an LMPD thing, this is an any organization thing, is who do you recruit and who makes up that organization. And so the new efforts that LMPD is taking now to have a police force that represents the community it serves, that better represents, is one thing that we have really been emphasizing, and it's starting to work.
Just following up on this theme, so I know, Mayor, you talked a lot about some of the proactive measures that Metro government was using to get into the community and efforts to reduce crime and engage. And a few months ago, we had with us, the program discussion was about neighborhood and community efforts to reduce violence in Louisville. And we had with us Joshua Community Connectors, No More Red Dots. And I was hoping that maybe one or both of you could talk a little bit about some of those organizations that couple both the proactive measures as well as some of the response work with their neighborhood community organizations.
So, big picture, so when you think about crime, we are an enforcement end, we have some prevention role, but really when you're talking about root causes of crime, we don't do that. We're not going to raise your kids for you. That's not what the police do. If we have to raise your kids, there's already a problem. And so when we talk, again, I'll refer back to our crime plan. The third front of our crime plan is sustained focus improvement. So that really is about how we change neighborhoods. So we've looked at the data of the 5 census tracts that are the biggest opportunity for improvement. And we have focused in those areas, not just our enforcement, but how we coordinate with other metro government entities. To make sure that we solve a lot of the problems in those neighborhoods so people can be proud and feel safe of the areas that they live in. And so what has happened is you see things like street lights being fixed, graffiti being cleaned up, houses being boarded at a pace that has never been done before in these areas. And then when you look at the mayor's larger community safety plan, that is a lot of focus on those other entities of how do we get people involved to solve a lot of those root causes of violent crime before it ever gets to the point where the police have to intervene.
And so some of those organizations, for example, Joshua Community Connections, in the prevention areas the chief was talking about, that there's a lot that we're working out with individuals who have been identified at most risk of committing a crime or being a victim of a crime. And so we're working very closely with Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman, with other partners at the federal level too. We just had a great announcement recently with federal partners where we had some major apprehensions of individuals that were doing a lot of bad stuff around the city. But we also work with nonprofit organizations. So if you take Kim Moore at Joshua Community Connectors, for example, they're individuals who might be involved in a gang here in Louisville that are looking for a way out. And their best way out is to move somewhere else where they might have family or friends or a support system that can help get them on a better path in life. So working with Kim and Joshua Community Connectors has been one area that we've been able to work with that. But there are a lot of great nonprofit partners that we work with. I mentioned Rose Smith with the ACE Project, who we work closely with. Her son was killed in a tragic act of gun violence. She created an organization in his memory, and just last weekend we were working together on reducing gun violence in our community. So there are a lot of great organizations that we're working with.
Thank you. Lourdes?
Would you please speak about the recruitment process and if applicant numbers have changed at all with this new recruitment process, and how many more officers are needed?
So our overall applicants are up, I think, about 14%. Minority applications are up. This next recruit class, we can hire up to 3 classes of 48 recruits a year. That's kind of our capacity. And we have had classes as low as 9, which is just, it doesn't even meet replacement rate of normal retirements. And so this next class that'll start next week will be 34, I believe, which is the highest number we've had in about 3 years, which is outstanding. It is still not where it needs to be. So we are going to continue to recruit. The process is lengthy. It is a strenuous process to get through. And so, but it's that way for a reason, is because we do want to screen out people that aren't fit for this job. But I think we're also at the point where we have to, simple things like we allow facial hair now, which we never would have done years ago because it wasn't considered professional. And I don't like changing the policy to accept it because I can't grow a beard. So, but things like that we have to get out of this thought of you have to fit a certain mold to be a police officer. Because you'll not only cut down your pool, but you'll just repeat all of the same people that are there. And we have great people here, but we need more people, and we need more ideas, we need more perspective. So, like our tattoo policy has changed. It used to be you couldn't have visible tattoos. Well, that's pretty acceptable now in society. So we have to adjust and understand that this next generation is a little bit different from us, and that doesn't mean that they're better or worse or have a lower work ethic. It's just different, and we need to understand that that's professional too.
And the training that actually occurs really runs the gamut. It's not just learning every one of these policies. It's not just learning how to shoot a gun, but it's also, there of course is the physical component, and there are tests and all of that physical requirements. There's also simulation training that LMPD has, simulator experiences, which are really interesting and unique when, as I've tried it, you put yourself in the situation that law enforcement is dealing with every day. There are also some new things that LMPD has done over the years. For example, in recent years, LMPD recruits have taken a 24 or 48-hour trip to Washington, D.C., and they see the nation's capital, many of whom have never seen that before. They visit the Holocaust Museum, where they have a special program there for them. They visit the African American History Museum, where, again, there's a special program knowing that they're recruits in a police academy. So lots of different areas to really have well-rounded individuals that are serving our community in this important role.
What efforts will you make to make sure that what you're doing now would continue under a new administration?
Well, the work that we're doing, we don't think it ever ends. So I think there's a little bit of a misperception there that you just check the boxes and then you're done. What the chief and I are saying is that we are creating a culture, we are creating policies, we are creating goals that are never going to end. We want constant improvement. And so that needs to continue far beyond whoever is sitting in our respective positions next. That's what this community demands. That's what this community deserves. And we're trying to ensure that we create organizations where this continuous improvement is the norm. Trying to create that in LMPD, and candidly trying to do that in every organization of Louisville Metro government. There are far too many parts of the government that, we're not focused on continuous improvements, and that's part of the culture change that I'm trying to lead right now internally at Louisville Metro government.
So, and there's kind of two parts to solving that problem, because I think we've all been in the situations where we made changes in an organization or wherever we were, and we thought it was changes for the better, and then as soon as we walk away, we see backsliding. But part of that is you have to create systems and you have to create cultures, right? So you have to have systems that are in place, that are functioning, so they issue spot when things aren't going well. The other thing that they do is that when you have individual poor performers as supervisors or whatever, it fills the gaps that the personality or the work ethic doesn't fill. So you maintain that baseline through your systems. And your culture is where you drive improvement. So this might be what I consider the perfect police department the day that I walk away. If it looks exactly the same 5 years later, then I didn't do a very good job of creating a culture that was constantly looking for ways to improve. So creating that culture and creating the systems simultaneously is how we make sure that there is no backsliding and there's constantly improving even after we're gone.
There has been an uptick of articles in TV news about juvenile crime. And the question is there a shift in strategic focus over the summer with, keeping those instances in mind with Algonquin Park, or, there was a council member who spoke about it as well?
So I want to clarify a difference between what is and how we feel. The juvenile crime rate is about the exact same as it has been the last, as it was last year. So juvenile crime actually is not up relatively, but that doesn't mean that we don't feel it. We feel the impact of crimes involving juveniles in a different way. And so we do have to wrap ourselves around that and figure that problem out. And for us, a lot of that is enforcement. A lot of that is presence. A lot of that is going out and intervening on those things before they become an issue. What you've seen around the country and what you saw in years past here is a lack of proactive engagement by police departments and by police officers, not just in the enforcement realm, but in the contacting people and being very visible in what we do. And so that is what we are pushing, is for officers to be out there, be very visible, and let's interrupt that cycle, and let's get to those young people before they commit that crime that they can't undo.
And there are, in that area, just to add to what the chief said, right now there was a juvenile correctional facility in downtown Louisville that was closed before I became mayor. The state now has that under their purview, and we have been rapidly encouraging the state to complete the work that's necessary to get that facility reopened. That will be helpful, and so we're going to continue to work with the state to make sure that happens. And also JCPS, having a strong relationship with them is important, and continuing to, they're one of the 19 police departments, but in addition to that, just knowing what's going on in the school, the stronger our educational system gets, we should see crime go down as a result of that, sharing information. I just met with the soon-to-be new superintendent of JCPS yesterday, and that was one of the areas that we talked about, is we need to make sure we continue to work very closely together because JCPS can play a role in our public safety solutions.
How active is the Citizens Police Academy?
So our Citizens Police Academy has really had a revitalization. We have Minerva Varola has taken over that project, and it's absolutely amazing. She's actually created several other academies, specialty academies for college students, for immigrant academies. And so that is an outstanding program, and I would encourage, if you are interested in understanding how the police department functions, to look into that. And it's a great opportunity for us to educate community members about how the police department operates. And we've actually had a few recruits come out of those programs where they were interested in college and ended up applying to the police department after.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that program, what it looks like, how long it is?
I'd have to get specifics because they're different for each program that she has running, but usually it's somewhere between 7 and 10 weeks. And there will be meetings with different units and exposure to the chief's office, homicide unit, all this stuff. You do ride-alongs, and so she really goes through the gamut of showing people how the police department functions and what role we play in the criminal justice system.
With the different partnerships that LMPD has, for example, the Home Rule City Police Departments, OSHN, Public Safety Commission, et cetera, what is your approach to understanding which strategies, investments are having the most beneficial impact on Louisville?
Can you repeat the tail end of that question again?
Yes. Working with the different partners that you have, the Home Rule City Departments, OSHN, Public Safety Commission, all the different groups state groups that you have and local groups that you have. What strategies do you use and investments are having the most beneficial impact on Louisville and LMPD?
Yeah. So, we right now are, all of the strategies, there's a lot of partnership strategies in our Safe Louisville plan, in the Chief's plan, and you're seeing that come to fruition. I mentioned our close work with Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman. I mentioned our partnerships with federal agencies, the DEA, the ATF, that have been very helpful in some very significant law enforcement work here that started with LMPD. Those partnerships are helpful. The nonprofits that we talked about as well. Of course, we have close relationships, the chief and his team, with all of the other 18 police departments around the city. Ultimately, I think it's two things. It's one, continuing to improve the statistics, which are not statistics. Those are people's lives. So every week, when the chief and I get a weekly update, we see it overnight, but then really on a weekly basis summarized. Are we making progress towards a safer city? And right now we are, and that's why we need to double down and continue to do more of what we're doing, more of what's been planned, and do it faster. That is our commitment. That is our goal. And then there's also, do people feel safe? And that one's can be tougher. There are still people that are, have been impacted by 2020 that believe certain things about certain parts of the city that might not be reflected in the data or experience, but that's the way they feel. You see things on the news about a shooting here or there, particularly when a juvenile is involved, and that impacts the way people feel. And so this work is never going to end. We will need to continue to do more and more and more every day, and that's what we're committed to.
Well, before we get to the closing where you all can add some general thoughts about public safety, I've got, I think, the question that's on most everybody's mind. How are we going to do in Omaha this weekend?
I thought you were going to ask that, Mike. Go-karts. Coach McDonald is a wonderful human being. Not only is he a great coach, he's created a great team and great young men that have come through his system, but he has been a wonderful contributor to this community. Last Saturday, Rachel and I were at Fern Creek Park, where we installed some of our 34 new pickleball courts over the past couple of years. They're at Fern Creek Park, but also Miracle League has a baseball field there, where kids of all abilities have the opportunity every Saturday morning to come together in a league and play. And Rachel and I were buddies in that league. And right there on the dugout, Coach Dan and Julie McDonald, who had donated a dugout there, they really are amazing contributors to this community. And so I'm so excited that the Cards are in the World Series. And Murray State, too. 2 Kentucky teams in the College World Series. That's something. He's the baseball guy, though.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge baseball fan. My dad actually played for U of L back in the '60s, and it's pretty neat because I have his jersey that he wore back then too. So it's pretty awesome.
His son's pretty awesome at it too.
What number
Deputy
was your
Chief
dad's?
McKinley, her daughter's an awesome
Who's 32.
softball player, so we've got all the diamond sports
Her
covered.
daughter plays for Assumption. Will be in the state championship this weekend.
Wow.
Good job, good job. Good.
As will Trinity and PRP. We got a lot of good baseball around here, so.
Well, and with that, I'll just invite both of you to give your closing remarks on not only the DOJ consent decree, but also the Louisville community commitment and our conversation today before we close out.
I will simply say, I encourage you to be a part of the solution. It's very easy to criticize. It's very easy to observe and talk to friends. We want you and others across the community to be a part of the solution. get involved, whether it's applying to be on the Community Safety Commission, to get involved in the academies that the chief was just talking about, or if you know someone who you think could be a great member of LMPD, encourage them to at least have a meeting to learn more about it. If you know someone who can be a great 911 call operator, we are looking for more great people to be a part of all of our first responder teams. So I would just encourage you to encourage others to get involved and be a part of the solution. Thank you all very much.
And Mayor, those 2 public feedback sessions, one tonight,
One's tonight at the Republic Bank YMCA at 18th and Broadway at 6 o'clock, and the other one is June 28th at the Newburgh Community Center. That's a Saturday morning at 10 a.m.
next week.
Yeah. Oh, next Tuesday? I'm sorry, next Tuesday, not tonight.
Thank you.
So, first of all, as it relates to the DOJ consent decree, it doesn't exist, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We have our community commitment that we're moving forward with, and so looking back at what the federal government did or didn't do is a waste of time, in all honesty. So let's move forward in how we make this community better and this police department better. So we have opportunities in front of us that we need to take advantage of. And so that's what we're going to do, is continue to build that culture where we're looking for opportunities for improvement. And I understand that you're not going to agree with every decision I make. You're not going to agree with every action that a police officer makes. I expect you to be very critical of us. That's what we want. That's what we need. That being said, I don't need you to agree with me. I don't need you to think that I always made the right choice about what this police department should do. As long as you understand what we're trying to do and you can respect that, we can respectfully disagree. I think we might have had a disagreement on the phone last night. But at the end of the day, we both respect the fact that we are trying to do the same thing, and that's take care of this city. And so as long as we can respectfully disagree, we can work together in any circumstances. And then the other thing is that we are open to your ideas. The only way to have a good idea is to have a lot of ideas. So we are open to your ideas. We want your feedback. We want ideas about how we can do this better, understanding that we're going to do things that don't work, and understanding that we're going to take some of your ideas that don't work. It doesn't matter. As long as we are moving in the right direction, we are good to go. And so we are more than happy to hear your feedback, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And I'll just say, you've really underscored the spirit of what the Louisville Forum is, which is having a platform for civil discourse. So thank you all again for all of your time today. We appreciate it and hope to see you back at the forum soon. Thanks.
Thank you all. Great job. Thank
Great
you.
job. Excellent. Excellent.